Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we're going to react to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. claiming that the Democrats have made a huge strategic mistake. So this is obviously related to, I think, Kamala Harris being endorsed publicly by Biden as the presidential campaign for the Democrats. I can understand why they did it. I mean, there's only three and a half months, four tops until the election. There's not a lot of time left. And if they wanted to do some kind of contest, that would have eaten more into the time that the winner would have to campaign, further cementing Donald Trump. Trump has basically, since the first debate even, and then the assassination attempt, his support base has definitely grown, I would say, and it's strengthened, it's fortified. The Democrats, really, for them to stand any chance, they need to pick somebody now and get behind them now with everything they've got. The Dems don't have 2-3 weeks for them to, go through the whole, let's whittle down a list, let's pick the top two, let's put them in front of, a selection of our supporter base for them to debate. They don't have the time for that. So I think they've made the right move in choosing somebody now. Although I still have question marks on whether it's the right person. Is that the strongest person that they had? We shall see.
So the Democrats have called themselves the party of democracy, but they ran the least Democratic primary ever. They skipped Iowa, New Hampshire, jumped straight to South Carolina. They killed all primary debates, booted RFK Jr. from the party because he posed a threat to Joe. Today, RFK Jr. held a press conference to tell Democrats, "I told you so."
A year ago, a little over a year ago, when I entered this race,
Is he okay? What's wrong with his throat?
predicted that President Biden suffered from a degenerative condition that was not going to improve and that it would make it impossible for him to govern effectively. The reaction of the DNC...
How ironic is it that he's talking about how Biden has a condition which should render him unable to run when he's clearly suffering from something right now?
That obvious condition was to hide it from the American public and to use their power over the Democratic Party nomination process to
Is he okay?
make sure that nobody could compete with President Biden in a way that would expose his deficiencies. And as a result, we are where we are today.
Can someone please get him a glass of water, please?
Which is in a period of crisis.
Presidential candidate RFK Jr. joins us now. So, RFK, you ran the right way. You did what you were supposed to do. You're a Democrat. You primaried a Democrat incumbent, and they wouldn't let you. How did they jam you out of this thing? Because now look at what happened.
Yeah, I think it was a strategic mistake by the Democrats, Jesse, and you.
Oh, so I think is it like a serious, because he still has it.
And I have talked about this before, but they got rid of, they changed the primary rules while while we were running the primary. They changed 60 different rules to make it impossible for anybody to challenge Joe Biden. One of the things that you remember that they did to me is I've been campaigning in New Hampshire, so they adopted a rule that said that any political candidate, any Democratic candidate who campaigns in New Hampshire, who steps foot into the state of New Hampshire, that all of their votes would go to the president, all of their delegates would go to the president.
Yeah, that's weird.
Instead of going to that. And then they shut down the Florida primary. They shut down a bunch of primaries and just said, we're not running them. We already have our candidate.
Yeah, that seems a little bit weird. Slightly undemocratic, really. I mean, how can you say that any vote that goes to any candidate other than the president goes to the president?
Weeks ago, President Biden was ridiculing Vladimir Putin, who won 88% of the vote in Russia.
Oh, look at the way he's just staring. Look at that. Look at that. Everyone else around him is dancing and he just looks like he's frozen. Look, watch.
Putin, who won 88% of the vote in Russia, and he said, that was a fixed election because President Putin had made sure no adversaries could challenge him, and also that he had fixed the press so the press wouldn't cover his adversaries. Well, the Democratic Party succeeded in doing the same thing. I haven't been allowed on any of the Democratic networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, as you know, Fox has allowed me on, although Fox, people like you have allowed me to speak. You debate me. You give me a platform, even though you don't agree with things that I say. And I think that
I mentioned him as a potential candidate for the Democrats because of the obvious name brand value he has. Kennedy, that name does carry a lot of weight. But a lot of people in the comments were like, oh, he's nuts, he's crazy. Like, why? Like, what is the craziest thing he said? Let me know in the comments, because I don't know. I just thought because he's an independent, he could run potentially, but apparently not. A lot of people don't think it would be a good idea. Why?
that's the way the media is supposed to work. But
Yeah, I mean,
the other
you can't,
media
it's like
networks have
Monopoly
forgotten about that.
and when you're playing with children, you just change the rules in the middle of the game and just kind of make it up as you go along. You can't do that when it comes to these high stakes. You know how things operate at conventions. There's been a long history of chicanery at these things. You've now have uncommitted delegates. Are we going to see bribery? Are we going to see quid pro quo? Are we going to see ambassadorships promised, donors greased? This is a sprint to grease as many delegates by mid-August as possible.
Yeah, I think, some of that is bound to happen. I think most of those delegates are kind of mom and pop people. They're committed to Biden. They committed originally to Biden. His releasing them, I think a lot of them are probably idealistic people who want to see the Democratic nominee or terrified of Donald Trump.
Problem is, I think, if they were going to have some kind of leadership contest, the Democrats, maybe if they set themselves a strict 2-week time limit so that whatever, they could have a Democratic vote or Democratic, elimination, and still have a good amount of time to build a campaign around that person. Let them compete for it, and may the best man or woman win. But I guess, Kamala Harris does tick a lot of boxes. She could, try and lean into the female vote. She can try and lean into the ethnic minority vote. Obviously the Democratic base vote as well. She could have that as well.
Want to see the Democratic nominee succeed, but I don't. The indicators now, Jesse, is that the party elites are not really going to let go of the process, and we'll see what happens. The last time, there's a lot of similarities between this election and what happened with my dad's election in 1968. There were.
Can someone let me know what's going on with his throat? Like, is it like a condition, or is he just got like a really, really bad sore throat? Why haven't they given him, why hasn't somebody handed him some water?
There was a war going on at that time that was very controversial and it was very damaging to our country. There were protesters in the street. The convention was in Chicago. And my father, who was leading, got knocked out by an assassin's bullet, not by a resignation. You, in effect, had an open convention, but the DNC at that time tried to maintain control over it. They put their candidate in, which Hubert Humphrey. There was the convention became riotous, and the riots shocked the American public, and they didn't want anything to do with the Democratic Party after that. And I think a lot of people in the Democratic Party probably should look back to what happened in 1968 and take some caution from allowing the party elites to continue to exercise control over their choices.
That would be good, sage advice from RFK Jr. And we will be, Jesse Waters Primetime, in Chicago, covering the DNC.
I'm quite intrigued by what I'm quite interested to know what RFK Jr. has done to have him labeled a crazy person. Because in so many of the comments in the video that I made yesterday about you know, him potentially being a candidate for the for Democratic leadership, people were just completely just disregarding him, saying that he wouldn't be appropriate, you know, he's a nutcase, etc., etc. And I mean, I've not heard him say anything. I mean, I'll confess, I've not really listened to him at any great length, but when I have heard him speak, the few snippets I've heard, he's not sounded unreasonable. Like but you know, maybe he said certain things on certain platforms that have completely alienated large portions of people. Let me know. I mean, regarding the Democrats, I think they've made a time dictated decision. They've looked at how much time they have left until the election, and they've just thought, plus obviously with Kamala being vice president for so long, she probably had sort of de facto status of being the next person up. It would have been a massive, you know, like disrespect to her for someone else to be pushed by Biden as the presidential campaign. It really would have just been a big disrespect. So in that sense, their hands were kind of tied. I get it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.